My name is Peter, and I don't like to talk about this story a lot, but I'll tell it to you here. I was with my hunting partner Dale when it happened, a night we would never forget, forever etched into our memories. It was pretty late in the gaming season, and Dale and I wanted to go out one last time to get our hands on a white-tailed deer. We both loved to use the last kill of the season to make a ton of jerky. We'd usually get around 60 pounds of meat and then split it between us. A lot of that we then sliced, marinated, stretched, cooked, and packaged into the various types and flavors of jerky we liked. Our families then traded it over the holidays. It was kind of a tradition. We had to drive through the mountains of Colorado to get to our favorite spot, but it was always worth it because of the abundant deer populations there. Plus, the drive was always nice to shoot the breeze and take in the scenery. It wasn't any different this time around. Beautiful mountain vistas, rivers, and a whole bunch of varieties of trees. We were in Dale's truck because our spot required a fair bit of off-roading to get there. We bounced back and forth on the rocks. I chipped a tooth once this way, Dale told me. Indeed, if you ever saw him smile, you'd notice his left canine tooth was almost half gone. It makes him look quirky, but it really does match his personality. Well, we parked and got our gear together. First off, we both had heavy camouflaged jackets on. It was really cold in the mountains that time of year. We also put on black gaiters, hats, and earmuffs to keep our faces warm. Next, we had loaded up our rifles. I own a Mountain Stalker lever-action Magnum rifle, a gift from my wife that I have been using for years. I call it the Lucky Striker because I rarely miss a shot with it. After we were ready, we headed out into the woods. There were some patches of snow on the ground, but not much. There hadn't been a huge snowstorm in the area yet like there usually had been, and that was part of the reason we were there. That being said, most of the leaves were off the trees now, so the trail we were hiking on was a bit hard to follow. The branches of ponderosa pine and quaking aspen trees wavered in the wind above us. It was pretty out there, I do have to admit. I like hunting for the sport of it, but also because it allows me to unwind. I live a pretty stressful life as a building contractor, so any chance I get to go away for a while, I'll take. Half an hour later, we made it to our destination, a miniature hunting tower up 25 feet in the air, just room enough for 2 people. We had reserved our spot there a few months back, so it should have just been us out there. Dale jokingly told me to watch out for campers as I made my way up the metal ladder into the enclosure. I knew he was joking, but I checked anyway, knocking on the metal frame by its door to see if anyone responded. Luckily, no one did. No animal did either. More than once I had found a skunk or squirrel hiding in the corner of these things ready to pounce on me. The last thing I wanted was to come home with rabies. We both set ourselves up in the stand and unscrewed mugs of steaming hot coffee, clinking them together. It was the good life. There is nothing more gratifying than being out in nature with a cup of warm coffee in your hands. Dale proceeded to tell me about some of the things that had happened to him since we last talked. Just some pretty mundane things, a concert he went to, a fight he got himself into at a bar, how the Denver Broncos were doing this season. I made small talk with Dale for the next hour or so as we settled in. Then we sat in silence, looking out of the viewing windows, waiting, watching. For anyone who is familiar with it, hunting is as much a game of patience than it is anything else. The hours passed and the day started to pass us by. The morning turned into the afternoon, and then later we saw the sun go behind the peak of a nearby mountain. As the evening came and it started to get dark, we decided to wrap it up for the night. We would have to continue our hunt the following morning, but that was okay. Dale had a small trailer attached to his truck with a few beds, so we could sleep nearby and then head back out the next day. By the time we finished packing up, it was completely dark by then. We wanted to get back to the trailer soon so we could eat a good supper. But before we could leave the hunting stand, I heard the crunch of leaves in the distance. Due to my experience in hunting, my ear was trained to listen for these types of sounds. "Hey," I whispered to Dale. "I think I hear something. Could be a deer." I looked in the direction of the sound and squinted. We couldn't kill deer at night, but at least we would know there was a population nearby so we could be ready for the next day. I couldn't see much in the dark, though. There was a pair of binoculars in my backpack that had pretty decent night vision, so I very slowly unzipped it as to not make any loud noises that would scare it off. Once I had them, I put them up to my eyes and looked. There was another crunch of leaves, this time louder, closer. I rushed to focus the binoculars and find the source. Dale was right next to me, breathing heavily. When they came into focus, I was shocked. It wasn't a deer or an animal. It was a dark figure. It looked like a man dressed in all black, and his eyes had an eerie glow, like he had the ability to see us clearly, though we could barely see him back in the dark. "Hey," I called out. "Are you okay, sir? Do you need help?" I asked. The figure took a few steps closer. He called out to us in a voice that was all messed up, like it was put through a voice modulator or something. "So you two are out here hunting or something," the man said. Dale and I looked at each other in confusion. Who was this man? "Yes," I replied to him. "We have permission to be out here. We have permits and everything, if that's what you're wondering." The man laughed at us and knelt. Then he started poking around the ground with a huge hunting knife. Dale and I were really concerned now. This weird man was just walking around in total darkness with a giant knife. How did he know we were out here? Then he said something that made me scratch my head. "Funny thing about animals," he said, "is that most of them don't see well in the dark. Makes them easy to kill, you know? They don't see you sneaking up on them." There was something about the way he said it that made me think he wasn't just referring to deer. Dale chimed in at this point. "Look, we're not out here for any trouble. If you have a problem with us, you can take it up with the sheriff." We were up in the air in the tower, and the ladder to get down faced the figure, who was about 50 feet away now. It really felt in that moment that we were trapped up there. "Trouble?" the voice called out to us. "I ain't the one out here causing trouble. In fact, I came to offer you a gift." I put my binoculars down for a moment. A gift? What did he mean by a gift? When I put them back up to my eyes, it was as if the man teleported 20 feet because he was now standing beside a huge boulder. "You're out here for meat." "Well, I got meat," he said. Dale instinctively started getting his rifle out of his case, and I didn't blame him. This guy seemed to have been stalking us. Who knew how long he was out there just watching us? "You're out here for some deer, right? Well, here you go." I zoomed in on my binoculars, and it was weird. Everything in my field of vision was clear except for the man, who was all distorted and blurry, like what you might see watching a really old TV or something. He disappeared behind the boulder, and a few seconds later re-emerged, carrying something huge over his shoulder. To my shock, it was a giant white-tailed deer. The biggest one I'd ever seen, and this guy was carrying it around like it was a sack of rice. He turned and looked at us, slamming the deer's carcass on the ground with a sickening wet thud. I zoomed in on the deer. It was freshly gutted. I could tell by the way its torso was caved in and the long cut that was made across its abdomen. Thick dark blood was still oozing from the cut, and its fur was matted all over. I'll never forget the deer's eyes. They looked shocked, like the last thing it had seen had terrified it. This deer had obviously died a long, painful death. "I got a deer for you two. Consider it a gift." At this point, Dale started loading a few rounds into the chamber of his rifle. He called out, "Listen, sir, that's really nice of you, but we don't want it. All we want is to be left alone now. Please take your deer and leave." The dark figure stomped around for a few seconds by the boulder, looking disappointed. "Oh, it's not enough, I get it. You want more than just the one." He disappeared behind the boulder again and returned with another deer over his shoulder and once again slammed it into the ground, blood splattering everywhere. "No, you're not understanding us," I yelled out to him. "Take your deer out of here and leave. This isn't normal. Do you live nearby or something?" The man didn't respond. His outline seemed to waver like a ghost, and his eyes, I'm telling you, there were holes where his eyes should have been, but they glowed ever so slightly. I wasn't sure at this point if it was even a man at all, but my rational mind listened to its deep voice. It sounded like a man. For the next several minutes, he continued to disappear behind the boulder and return with deer after deer until a giant pile of carcasses towered high next to the boulder. They were all covered in blood, twigs, leaves, dirt, and mud. Not clean looking at all. I wouldn't have touched them with a 60-foot pole. Dale and I were so shocked we couldn't and didn't speak until the man stopped. But he didn't. After he piled up the deer, he started throwing other animals from behind the boulder next. Squirrels, raccoons, birds, and to my astonishment, skinless skunks. Those ones looked like they had been dead a while. As soon as he threw those was when the scent of the dead animals really hit us. I almost puked. All of the animals were gutted, hollow carcasses. "Is this not enough?" the man said. "Is this not enough to satisfy you? Listen, freak. Get the hell out of here now before I start shooting." "My gun's loaded," Dale yelled. He was shaking a little, not common for the tough guy that he was. But the figure wasn't done. He dragged out a giant clear plastic bag that looked like it was full of liquid. He threw it next to a deer, but the bag got ripped by some antlers and started spilling out on the ground. Out came pouring blood and organs, hearts, livers, entrails, and who knows what else. "Don't waste the organs," the man said, now circling his kills with his huge hunting knife. "They are the best part, especially the liver. The livers are so good. I like deer liver, but my favorite has to be... Never mind. It's all yours now. You can have all of this." A gift from one hunter to another. Maybe it was the sweat hitting my eye. Maybe it was the adrenaline. But I kid you not, this person jumped an impossible 6 feet into the air to the top of his kill pile and then just sat there. "We don't want anything to do with these animals," I yelled. "Please go away now before we call the police." Dale fired a warning shot into the air. The figure hopped down to the ground. "Fine, have it your way," it said. I say it because by this point this person sounded more monster than man. The figure started sharpening his knife on the rock and then started walking towards us. It didn't take much guessing to see that this person had ill intentions towards us. Dale fired another warning shot. "Don't do anything stupid," he yelled. The figure continued towards us. Dale told him it was his last chance and then fired again, this time at the figure. Damn, I missed. I followed everything through the binoculars, and while the man down below should have been becoming clearer as he came closer, he didn't. In fact, he was more distorted than ever, living static. "Shoot it," I yelled. Dale shot and missed again. The thing was now at the ladder to the hunting tower. I dropped my binoculars, terrified. Dale and I huddled in the corner, with him pointing the gun towards the opening. The ladder clanged as heavy footsteps made their way up. We held our breath. The knife appeared first, then the thing's head, then its torso as he climbed into our tower. "Shoot," I yelled. Dale shot again and this time hit his target. The figure fell out of the tower and we heard it hit the ground below. My heart was racing as I waited to see if I could hear any movement from it on the ground. Nothing. Slowly, I made my way towards the door, Dale telling me to be careful. Looking down the ladder, there was nothing there. The man, or whatever it was gone. I don't know how, because we should have been able to hear the sound of someone running away, but there was nothing there. Taking our opportunity, Dale and I quickly gathered our things and exited the hunting tower. Running as fast as we could, we made it back to Dale's truck. He revved the engine and we drove 2 hours to a motel. We didn't want to risk being out in the woods that night. We knew we had to call the police to report the incidents, but we decided to wait until morning. At least then we would be able to see out there. It was a restless night, but we managed to get through it. The next morning we called the police, told them our story, and met them out at the scene. And yes, I know what you're thinking. What did we find when we went back? Well, for starters, all of the dead animals were still there, as bloody and smelly as ever. There were no gunshot wounds on any of them, or arrows or anything that might have been used to kill them. In fact, it looked like whoever or whatever it was we encountered last night had killed these things with his bare hands, used his knife to cut them open and pull out their organs, probably while they were still alive. It makes me feel faint just thinking about it. And for the man himself? Well, there was no sign of him ever being there other than a few footsteps. No body, no blood, no trail. No one lived nearby, no one had yet checked themselves into any hospital for any gunshot wounds. That was that. But I couldn't take my eyes off the bloody bag of organs and entrails. Who would do something like this? I didn't know. The man said it was a gift for us, but it was just a horror show. In a weird way, I did feel bad for letting all the deer spoil, but there was no way I would ever trust that meat. Plus, the 2 police officers who came couldn't stop taking photos like it was some sort of fashion show or something. Anyway, I digress. It's been 5 years since this happened and there has been no sighting of the man Dale and I saw. We still do go hunting and we still do enjoy it, but we make sure to stay far away from that particular spot that we now only associate with being a house of horrors.